Well, the U.S. President Joe Biden hailed the power of the Pacific in his toast at a gala dinner for the heads of delegations at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in San Francisco on Thursday night. The dinner came on the heels of the high-stakes summit with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, where the two sides reached agreements covering drug use, military communication and artificial intelligence. The summit opened with a sense of relief after Biden and Xi met for the first time in a year and emerged pledging to avoid the kind of dangerous rift that could upend the world economy. They agreed to restore military-to-military links. President Xi promised to crack down on the production of ingredients in China for the drug fentanyl flooding into the United States. The U.S. President told the epic summit that Washington was committed to the region despite Beijing's efforts to expand its influence in the Asia-Pacific.
The United States is a Pacific power. I had that brief discussion yesterday with President Xi. He asked he had asked me before, I reminded him, why we were so engaged in the Pacific. It's because we're a Pacific nation. And because of us, there's been peace and security in the region, allowing you to grow. He didn't disagree. By the way, it was a very good, straightforward meeting.
Biden, however, said the U.S. and China were now committed to diplomacy to avoid surprises and bad misunderstandings. Remember, the United States and China have one of the world's most important and complex bilateral relationships. Biden, for his part, said that despite his talks with Xi, he still considers the communist leader a dictator, a remark that drew fire from the Chinese government. President Xi, however, received a warm reception at the dinner in San Francisco on Wednesday. Hundreds of U.S. business leaders rose to their feet and clapped as he entered and gave him several rounds of applause. And finally, some visuals making a buzz after their meeting. Biden and Xi chatted about their presidential cars. The U.S. president dubbed his Chinese counterpart's vehicle beautiful before saying it looked like a Cadillac. And well, for more on the epic summit and its highlights and what could it mean for Joe Biden's message to companies which are a part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, VOA correspondent Jessica Stone sent us this report.
Yeah, some very poignant and key messages from President Biden to all of the APEC CEO Summit attendees. Literally hundreds of businesses here represented from around the Pacific Rim, 21 member countries, of course, in APEC, 21 member economies, I should say. He had the main message: we need you, we want you, and already, he said, APEC nations have invested some $200 billion in the U.S. economy. And he asked them to continue considering the U.S. economy as a worthwhile investment. He also had another main message, and that is that the U.S., he said, is a good partner and wants to continue being a good partner to the Pacific Rim nations. That's really key here because, of course, there has been doubts in the past about the U.S. staying power in the region, particularly when U.S. presidents have not attended APEC summits or the East Asia Summit, for example. And so it's a really key thing for him to express, particularly also because of the two wars that the U.S. is involved in, the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. So when it comes to those questions, the president definitely speaking to those that would say he might have difficulty with all of the balancing necessary for that. Another thing that I think is important to point out about the president's remarks today here in San Francisco is that he spoke to the U.S.-China competition. You know, he met with President Xi Jinping for over 4 hours on Wednesday, and he got 2 applause lines, and they were these. He said that the U.S. and China are going to be going forward, having better communication to avoid miscalculation. That got an applause. And then the other main applause line, a stable relationship, he says is good for the U.S. and China and for its global partners. So the president underscoring that the U.S. is still open for business from Pacific Rim nations and that the U.S. can still manage these crises on the conflict front while continuing to invest and be a good partner to businesses throughout this region.